Hello everybody, it's Vaultboyhunter here, Sam, with Magic Gathering Strat. It is late, I should be asleep, but instead I'm going to talk about some sets. Tonight we actually have kind of an interesting show. Not any sets I'm particularly interested in talking about, but more interesting in the fact that it's 4 sets that we're going to be talking about tonight. And we're going to be talking about Chronicles, Renaissance, and Renaissance. And 5 sets. Wow, it's a 5-for-1. And so that's value for you. And then we'll be the main thing we'll be talking about is Homelands tonight. So nothing too exciting. So basically Chronicles, talking about real quick each of those, and then the meat of the pie will be Homelands, so it's going to be a gross pie to eat, so don't eat it. So Chronicles was not the first reprint set, because that would have really been revised or unlimited or whatever, but it's the first reprint set to pull cards from basically every set. It's kind of considered to be an extension of 4th edition, until the release of Modern Masters. It was notable for being the only tournament legal non-core set that introduced no new cards. So, some details as I take a sip of water. I'm looking a few things up. All the cards were from Arabian Nights. Antiquities, Legends, or the Dark. 14 from Arabian Nights, 21 from Antiquities, 71 from Legends, and 19 from the Dark. So automatically you kind of see where they went wrong pulling so much from Legends. Legends had the most value at the time out of all those sets for whatever strange reason. And it was by far the worst of those sets. Well, maybe the Dark. But Antiquities and Arabian Nights had a lot more powerful cards. Each set, and the American printing, we'll talk about Chronicles first, white bordered with the original expansion symbols on it, which Reaper sets now, they get their own expansion. Let's see. Trying to see anything else really interesting. It was basically just a bad idea all around. To do this particular set. Some cards in the set would prove to become more powerful as players. Here, one moment. Alright, I went to take a sip of water and I swallowed a beard hair. Really uncomfortable. Basically, like, Wizards caught a lot of flack with printing this. Because collectors at that point were driving the game a lot of the time, and they didn't want their Elder Dragons and stuff to drop in value, which is really annoying. It's just super annoying that because of Chronicles, basically the reserve list came into play, and I hate the reserve list. I'm kind of on the anti-reserve list side. Other than that, it's just not a very interesting set. I mean, the sets back then, they weren't balanced, so because they weren't balanced, none of the good cards got reprinted. So basically, you ended up with a reprint set full of Angelic Voices and Blood of the Martyr and Divine Offering, but you didn't end up with getting like cards like Swords to Plowshares reprinted, or anything interesting or really fun to play with. Reprinted Dan. But yeah, I bought a fair amount of Chronicles, mostly because at that point I really wanted Cities of Brass, and they were expensive until Chronicles came out. So, but that's Chronicles for you. Not too much exciting to say about it. So Chronicles, that released in July of '95. Renaissance came out in 3 different countries in August of '95: German, French, and Italian. And basically, each country, they got reprints. The German and French versions are the same, but that's not true, because there's a German version and there's a French version, and just automatically you see card differences. So while it says the German and French versions are the same on the wiki that I'm looking at currently, I don't think that's true. I just think that every country seemed to get their own unique Renaissance set. For Germany, it was 122 cards. For France, it was 122 cards. They're black bordered because for these countries, they were the first time some of these cards had been printed in these languages, and that's something that Wizards said they would do. As the first time a set is released in a country, they get the black border. They all contain 122 cards that rotated into 4th edition from expansions and sets that were not printed in the 2 languages. It says the breakdown is 10 Arabian Nights, 23 Antiquities, 55 Legends, 32 Dark cards, and 2 cards from Unlimited that were not printed and revised: Iron Clockworks and Twiddle. The number of cards in each color is not the same. There are 18 white, 18 blue, 19 black, 23 red, 16 green, 25 artifact, and 3 land cards. I wonder what land cards. Oasis, Strip Mine, black bordered Strip Mine, and Mishra's Factory. Here, let's go. Just for yucks, let's see if I can find. I don't know how much Strip Mine is. Yeah, it's not a high dollar card or anything like that. But I just wonder if they have anthologies. Only black borders. No, don't play white bordered cards, kids. Yeah, for some strange reason it's hard to find the foreign language cards on TCG Player. Here, let's... Strip Mine, German. German Strip Mine. I hope this comes with a magic card. Okay. Because I don't know if they strip mine. They obviously have strip mining machines in Germany. Nope, they don't have any. Okay, well, if Star City doesn't have them, they must not be very common at all. Okay, so and then Renaissance, the French Renaissance, obviously no strip mine. Well, no, that's not true. I guess in France it could be a different. Yeah, see, it starts with mine. But that's those 2 sets. Now, the Italian version of Renaissance was much smaller. It's only 69 cards. It only contained 69 cards, so that means that some of these probably have multiple arts, all of which were taken from Arabian Nights, Antiquities, and Unlimited, because Legends was already printed. It was all, these 60 cards were all the 35 cards as in the German and French versions, but Piety, plus all 26 cards from Arabian Nights and Antiquities that were reprinted in Chronicles. Just a total mess. It's a completely different set. But it's just, there's not a whole lot of interesting things going on. Since it is a reprint set, I do like those Urza's lands, though. See, that's what it is. There's multiple printings of the Urza lands. And that's what makes up the extra, whatever, 9 cards it is. So, but yeah, Italian Chronicles Renaissance. So that's all I'm really going to talk about Chronicles. Just a mistake all around. Speaking of mistakes, let's talk about the main set we're going to be talking about this episode, and that's Homelands. Oh, Homelands, what badness you brought to the game. I swear, if Magic was ever on the verge of dying, releasing Homelands in between Ice Age and Alliances had to have been like a really close point to that. So Homelands came out in October 14th in 1995. So we're coming up on the anniversary of Homelands coming out. Oh, here, one moment. I forgot to bring up my little cube counter. Not that I think I'm going to pull anything from Homelands. 20 years since Homelands has come out, or almost 20. It'll be 20 in a couple of months. 7th Magic expansion. Wow. It was the second expansion of Ice Age block until 2006 when Cold Snap replaced it. Cold Snap being more thematically a part of the block. Frequently panned as Magic's all-time low in game design, though as praised for the quality of its setting and flavor. Now, I'm very tired of the gothic horror setting after it just kind of being jammed at us over and over again recently. It was in Origins. Innistrad, of course, was a gothic horror block, so I'm really tired of it, and going back to Homelands is just gag me. Let's see. It was designed away from Ice Age, and that's why it didn't really fit to the Ice Age theme. So no snow, no cumulative upkeep, different expansion symbol. Just really strange. This was the first set I ever bought a box of back in 1995, so I would have been a junior or senior in high school, and definitely not the first time you want your first time to be a little more gentle than this. Let's see. 25 commons, 47 uncommons, and 43 rares. So it was a small set. Very strange that the rares are so much higher than the commons. It's kind of the inverse now. Each common card has 2 pieces of art, making collectors view this as a 140 card set because collectors are insane. The art on all versions of the same card are illustrated by the same artist. It was probably the last set printed in Belgium because it was the last set to be printed on a 121 card sheet that was used by one particular firm, but that firm at some point did start making cards again. It was the last expansion to be printed on only 2 sheets and sold in 8 card booster packs. Each booster bears the same green background image, and it was the first simultaneous international release in German, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Italian. So everything got launched basically at the same time. The storyline is Planeswalker Froza came across Ulgaroth, the once beautiful plane now destroyed by the Wizards' War. Stupid Wizards' War ruined everything. At the last unspoiled oasis on this plane, he met fellow planeswalker Sarah, whom he married. Together they worked to restore the plane and to protect it. Friezo's brand was created. Friezo died during its creation, however, and the grief-stricken Sarah abandoned the plane. In her absence, the isolated civilizations of the plane fight amongst each other while the vampire Baron Singer plots to take control of the plane under the fading ban of Fezro. No new mechanics in it. Real-world creature types like bats and gargoyles, stuff you find in nature. Clockwork artifact creatures, legendary creatures, and a number of tribal effects like Minotaur and junk like that. Let's see. Unexpected low power level compared to previously released expansions. The expansion was developed as many of the earlier sets were without much communication between designers and various other sets. So this, like, it was kind of doomed from the start. There are a few quote-unquote notable cards in it. Some of them are notable kind of for being bad. Some of them are notable for being the last of their kind. So we'll kind of discover that when we get to them. So, okay, so let's get started. Abbey Gargoyles is a 3/4 for 5, 2 colorless white, white, white. And it has protection from red. So kind of a French vanilla creature. Abbey Matron, with its 2 horrible artworks, is a 1/3 for 2 colorless and a white. And it has white tap. Abbey Matron gains +0/+3 until end of turn. So I guess that's okay in combat. Next up is Asen Bureaucrats. It's a 1/1 for a colorless and a white. And it has tap target creature with power no greater than 2. Power 2 or less is what I would say now. Next up is Asen Crusader. It's a 2+X, 2+X creature for 2 colorless and white, white. And its power and toughness are equal to 2 plus the number of soldiers or soldiers or warriors you control. So that's an interesting point here, is that as we go through here, there's super limited support for that in this particular set, making this a horrible set for like limited or something, because you could rip that as a rare and then it'd be basically a worthless card. Next up is Asen Highway, which gives all white creatures Planeswalk. It's an enchantment for 3 colorless white, white, white. Next up is Beastwalkers. So at the point that the set came out, this was a Summon Heroes. It has been changed to be a human beast soldier, so it will actually work off of the Asen Crusader. It is a 2/2 for a colorless white, white, and green, and it gains banding until end of turn. Next up is Death Speakers. It's a 1/1 for 1 white, so just 1 white, and has protection from black. Pretty simple. Next up is Haze-Duher the Abbot. It's a 2/5 human cleric for 3 colorless white, white, and has X tap. The next X damage that would be dealt this turn to target white creature you control is dealt to Haze-Duher instead. Next up is Leeches, one of the few ways to interact with poison counters, I think, in the entire game. So it's 1 colorless white, white. Target player loses all poison counters, and Leeches deals that many damage to that player. So if you have 8 poison counters, you take 8 damage and remove the poison counters. It's a rare. It's been reprinted as a rare on MTGO, but it's never been like reprinted. Like, I always thought a similar effect in Scar's Block would have been good, but I'm not on design and development. They wanted to push Impact. So next up is Mesa Falcon, a 1/1 flying bird for a colorless and a white, and it has 1 white, and it has reverse fire breathing, so it gains +0/+1 until end of turn. And that's one of the ones with 2 arts. I prefer that particular art out of the 2. Not that either of them are spectacular. Next up is Prophecy, your first shot at Ayashan's Shade. Prophecy is a white. It's a sorcery. It's reveal the top card of an opponent's library. If it's a land, you gain 1 life. Then that player shuffles his or her library, and then you draw yourself a card at the beginning of the next turn, upkeep, because you're worth it. Next up is Rakasha the Slayer, legendary creature, human archer. She's a 3/3 for 3 colorless white, white. She has reach. And whenever Rakasha the Slayer blocks 1 or more black creatures, Rakasha gets +1/+2 until end of turn. Very odd. Not a lot of black flying creatures, but next up is Samite Alchemist. It's a 0/2 for 3 colorless and a white. It has white, white tap. Prevent the next 4 damage that would be dealt this turn to target creature you control. Tap that creature. It doesn't untap during your next untap step. Completely unplayable. And the art on both of them is quite funky. Next up is Sarah Aviary. So it's a world enchantment, or enchant world. So only one can be in play at a time, and creatures with flying get +1/+1. That now costs a colorless and a blue. It's just an enchantment. It's an uncommon. It just works a lot better. Next up is Sarah Bestiary. So it's an enchantment aura for white. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Sarah Bestiary unless you play white. An enchant creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities with tap and their cost can't be activated. Display Arrest. That was even an uncommon. Next up is Sarah Inquisitors. It's a 3/3 human cleric for 4 colorless and a white. Whenever Sarah Inquisitors blocks or becomes blocked by one of our black creatures, Sarah Inquisitors gets +2/+0 until end of turn, becoming a 5/3. That's not bad. I mean, for a 3/3 for 5 mana, though. I guess at this point of the game, that was pretty much par for the course. Next up is Sarah Paladin. It's a human knight for 2/2 for 2 colorless and white. This is the other support for the Aeson Pilgrim Crusader in the set. So Sarah Paladin is tapped. Prevent the next 1 damage that would be dealt to target creature or player this turn, or 1 colorless white and tap. Target creature gains vigilance until end of turn. So not good. Next up is Sorcery the Falconer. Another kind of oddball creature. A legendary creature, human 2/2 for a colorless white. Bird creatures get +1/+1, which is just super. And then it has colorless and a white. Target bird gains banding until end of turn. So just all around a great card. Next up is Trade Caravan. 1/1 for 1 white. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a currency counter on Trade Caravan, so that's a strange counter. And then remove 2 currency counters from Trade Caravan. Untap basic land. Activate this ability only during opponent's upkeep. So why would you ever want to do that? I don't understand. And then both of the arts are almost identical. I guess some of the early artists, what they did is they made cards that you would want to lay side by side, and that looks like that's kind of an example of that. Next up is Truce. Truce is kind of an odd card. And it's an instant for 2 colorless and a white. Each player may draw up to 2 cards. For each card less than 2 a player draws this way, that player gains 2 life. So really it says each player draws 2 cards. Because, I mean, who needs the life? You want extra cards. And with Trade Caravan, that is the last white card. Small set. So we're going to go ahead and roll over to Bakey's Curse. Sorcery, 2 colorless, blue. Bakey's Curse deals 2 damage to each creature for each aura attached to that creature. It's not good. Next up is Chain Stasis. Don't get excited, it's not as good as Chain Lightning. It's an instant for blue. You may tap or untap target creature, then that creature's controller may pay 2 colorless and a blue. If the player does, he or she may copy the spell and choose a new target for that copy. So it's a weird, unusable twiddle effect, and it's a rare. So next up is Coral Reef, another situation of having some strange counters. Coral Reef enters the battlefield with 4 pull-up counters on it. Just immediately, you just go, okay, this card's unplayable. It's an enchantment, too. It's not even like a creature. So sacrifice an island, put 2 pull-up counters on Coral Reef, because when you're playing blue, you want to really just sacrifice all your lands. And then it has blue, tap and untap blue creature you control, remove a pull-up counter from Coral Reef, put a +0/+1 counter on that creature. On target creature, not even that creature. It could be any creature you want. You can go nuts. You can put it on your opponent's creatures, your creatures, creatures in the graveyard, not that last one. Like, I mean, so much work. Next up is Dark Maze with art by Rob Alexander. I remember trying to get this card to work and it just doesn't. So it's 4 colorless and a blue. It's a defender for a 4/5, and it has 0. Dark Maze can attack this turn as though it didn't have defender, and you exile at the beginning of the next end step. So basically, you blow it up to attack with a 4/5. There were better 4/5s at this point. Next up is Forget. Sorcery, blue. Target player discards 2 cards and draws that many cards, then draws as many cards as he or she discarded this way. and it's a rare, and it's been reprinted as a rare twice. I mean, I guess that's kind of card draw. It echoes like a card like Tormenting Voice or something like that, like a red effect. But it's simply just not good. It's just not a good card. Next up is a Giant Albatross with 2 printings. Big old birdie. Okay, it's a 1/1 flying for a colorless and a blue. When Giant Albatross dies, you may pay a colorless and a blue. If you do, for each creature that dealt damage to Giant Albatross this turn, destroy that creature unless its controller pays 2 life. A creature destroyed this way can't be regenerated. Or you just take 1 a couple times. You just never block the stupid thing. Next up is Giant Oyster. It's a 0/3 Oyster for a 2 colorless and blue. And they actually time shifted this stupid thing in Time Spiral block. It's ridiculous. You may choose not to untap Giant Oyster during your untap step. And then tap. For as long as Giant Oyster remains tapped, target tap creature doesn't untap during its controller's untap step. At the beginning of each of your draw steps, put a -1/-1 counter on that creature. When Giant Oyster leaves the battlefield or becomes untapped, removed all -1/-1 counters from that creature. Stupid. Not good. Next up is Jinx, colorless and a blue. Target land becomes a basic land type of your choice until end of turn, and draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So that's playable simply because it lets you cycle. It's not good. Not good. Okay, next up is Labyrinth Minotaur with some pretty nice art from Anson Maddox. That one is probably my favorite of the two. Very weird that blue has a Minotaur. But it is a 1/4 common creature for 3 colorless and a blue. Whenever Labyrinth Minotaur blocks a creature, that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So very blue flavor on there. It's just odd that a creature type that we see as red or green is featured on there. So next up is Marjan. It's a Leviathan. It's an 8/8 for 5 colorless blue. Does not untap during your untap step. And you can pay blue and sacrifice a creature to untap Marjan. Activate this ability only during your upkeep. So you can do it at the end of turn to save some mana. And it cannot attack unless a defending player controls an island. And then blue, Marjan gets -1/-0 until end of turn and deals 1 damage to target creature without flying. And if you control no island, sacrifice Marjan. But I mean, how are you going to cast that stupid thing? You're going to want to play it in a blue deck. Actually, you're going to want to set it on fire in your backyard. But if you were going to play it, you definitely would want to be able to untap it. Just not a good card. It is on the reserve list, so we don't have to worry about it getting reprinted and bringing down the value of the original version. So, next up is Memory Lapse with some pretty decent art by Mark Tenen. I prefer the Hellraiser style art right here. It's an instant for a colorless and a blue. Counter target spell. If that spell is countered this way, put it on top of its owner's library and set it into that player's graveyard. This has been reprinted quite a few times. I like it for a tempo hit. So next up is Merchant Scroll. Sorcery for a colorless and a blue. Search your library for a blue instant card. Reveal that card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This is restricted in Vintage. Most tutor effects are restricted or banned in Vintage. Legal on Legacy. Legacy has less broken stuff to go with it, is the reason why. But so that's one of the more noticeable cards, or one of the better cards in the set, basically. Next up is Mystic Decree, another enchant world, or world enchantment. 2 colorless blue. All creatures lose flying and island walk. This was a rare. Next up is Narwhal. Narwhal is a 2/2 well creature for 2 colorless blue, and has first strike and protection from red. And that was a rare. Next up is Reef Pirates. 2/2 for a colorless blue. Whenever Reef Pirates deals damage to an opponent, that player puts the top card of his or her library into the graveyard. This was a common. 2 arts. Again, neither of which are particularly great. Next up is Rebecca, Wizard Savant. Another legendary creature. It's a dwarf wizard. It's a 0/1 for 2 colorless and blue. And you tap. Rebecca, Wizard Savant deals 2 damage to target creature or player and doesn't untap during your next untap step. So, hard pass. No thanks. Next up is Sea Sprite. Infinitely more playable than Rebecca. Sea Sprite is a 1/1 flying fairy for a colorless and a blue with protection from red. And then Sea Troll to go with Sea Sprite, which is a 2/1 troll for 2 colorless and a blue. As blue, regenerate Sea Troll. Activate this ability only if Sea Troll blocked or was blocked by a blue creature this turn. Why? I don't understand. Next up is Wall of Kelp. Wall of Kelp is a 0/3 plant wall for blue. Defender, this creature can't attack. Of course. And then blue tap, put a 0/1 blue plant wall creature token with defender naming Kelp onto the battlefield. So that's a weird token. It was a rare. Next up is Aether Storm. I think this is the last blue card. It's an enchantment for 3 colorless and a blue. Creature spells can't be cast. Pay for a life. Destroy Aether Storm. It can't be regenerated. Any player may activate this ability. Okay, yep, that was the last blue card. We're over to Baron Singer, the bad guy of this story. So he's a 5/5 flying creature for 5 colorless black. So 8 mana for a 5/5. Whenever a creature dealt damage by Baron Singer dies this turn, +2/+2 counter on Baron Singer, and then he taps to regenerate another target vampire. So that would be bomby in like a limited format, but boy, it's so expensive for standard or for constructed. It was expensive for standard. I mean, at this point, standard was like revised in Ice Age and stuff, and Baron just didn't have any hope. Next up is Black Carriage, a 4/4 horse for 3 colorless black. He has Trample, which is just odd for black. It doesn't untap during your untap step, and you can sacrifice a creature to untap Black Carriage, but you can only do it during your upkeep. Next up is Broken Visage. So it's an instant for 4 colorless and a black. It's a rare. It destroys target non-artifact attacking creature. It can't be regenerated. Put a black spirit token with that creature's power and toughness onto the battlefield. Sacrifice the token at the beginning of your next end step. So I guess you just use it to generate an extra blocker. Is pretty much what you would do. Not that that's particularly, I mean, at 5 mana it's tricky to use. It's really clunky. Next up is Cemetery Gate. It is a 0/5 wall for 2 colorless and a black. Has protection from black. Remember that being playable at this point simply because the protection from black on a black spell was kind of relevant because a lot of people are playing like Necro decks. Next up is Dredge Spell. It's an enchantment for black. And you pay black and just exile 2 creature cards from your graveyard, and you put a 1/1 black skeleton creature token onto the battlefield. It has black regenerate this creature. So there's a long history of black 1/1 skeletons that do that. And then when Dredge Spell leaves the battlefield, destroy all skeleton tokens. They can't be regenerated. Next up is Dry Spell. So a sorcery for a colorless and a black. Dry Spell deals 1 damage to each creature and player. So a little board wipe. Next up is Feast of the Unicorn, a common that was printed 2 different times in core sets and once in anthologies. So it's an enchanted creature gets +4/+0. So even then, playing an enchantment like this was just asking to get 2 for 1, and that was no different. Next up is Funeral March. Aura for a colorless black enchant creature. When an enchanted creature leaves the battlefield, its controller sacrifices a creature. Again, not good. I mean, it just doesn't have an effect really that does anything. Next up is Ghost Hounds, a 1/1 Spirit Hound for a colorless and a black. Has Vigilance, which is strange. And whenever Ghost Hound blocks or becomes blocked by a white creature, Ghost Hounds gain first strike until end of turn, which is strange. But it's on a 1/1, has not been reprinted online. So next up is Grandmother Singer, which has been reprinted online. Legendary creature, human wizard, 3/3 for 4 colorless and a black. Has black, colorless and a black tap. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Probably the most useful of the Singer clan. Next up is Greater Werewolf, to go with Lesser Werewolf from the earlier set. I think it was in Legends. It's a 2/4 werewolf for 4 colorless and a black. At the beginning of combat, put a -0/-2 creature on each creature blocking or blocked by Greater Werewolf. Because it scratches them and makes them sick, I guess. Next up is Headstone, instant, colorless and a black. Exile target card from a graveyard. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn, upkeep. So Cremate is just a strictly better version. Next up is Ice and Shade, one of the playable cards from the set at the time. A 5/5 legendary creature, Shade Knight, for 3 colorless, black, black, black. Has protection from white. Dodges Swords of Plowshares, which was important. Most of these other things don't. Next up is Irene Singer. This is the black sheep of the Singer family. She listens to pop music and likes to eat a Burger King. Okay, so she's a 2/2 vampire dwarf for 2 colorless, black, black. And green enchantment spells and white enchantment spells cost 2 more to cast. Which I guess is relevant, but just not good. Next up is Koskin Falls. It's a rolled enchantment for 2 colorless, black, black. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Koskin Falls unless you tap an untapped creature you control. And creatures can't attack you unless their controller plays 2 for each creature he or she controls that's attacking you. It's Propaganda or a Ghostly Prison with huge drawback. Neither of those cards have been printed at this point, of course, but display those instead. Next up is Singer Autocrat. I thought it was Aristocrat. When Singer Autocrat enters the battlefield, put 3 +0/+1 black surf token creatures onto the battlefield. And when he leaves the battlefield, exile all surf tokens. So basically, it's a 2/5. But you just have to kill him to get rid of the other 3 points of toughness. And it was time shifted. It was rare, and rare in the 4 times it's been printed. So yeah. Next up is Singer Bats. 1/2 bat flying creature for a colorless, black, black. And whenever it dies, it has the Singer Vampire effect. It gets a +1/+1 counter. So I remember somebody I played against pairing that with Flame Whip at some point or another, and then because Flame Whip deals 1 damage, just picking off weenie creatures to make it gigantic. And then that had 2 arts, neither of which are terrific. Yeah, this art's bad. Let's make another card with the same art on it, or a different art on it. Next up is Timorant Fiends. Timorant Fiends is the last card with Anti in Magic. We never get another Anti card after this one. So, Timorant Fiends is a 1/1 for a colorless, black, black. And then, of course, it has the remove from your deck if you're not playing for Annie. Black, black, black Samurai. Sacrifice Timorant Fiends. The owner of target artifact may ante the top card of his or her library. If that player doesn't, exchange ownership of that artifact in Timorant Fiends. Put the artifact card in your graveyard and Timorant Fiends from anywhere into that player's graveyard. The change of ownership is permanent. So you take an artifact and you give them that stupid Fiends. It was a rare. It's banned everywhere because nobody plays for Anti because Anti is ridiculous. Next up is Torture. It's an enchantment for black. Enchant creature, and then colorless and a black, put a -1/-1 counter on enchanted creature. That's the better of the 2 arts, I think. Mark Teaton does good work, but next up is Beldrain of Singer. A legendary creature, human rogue, 5/5 for 5 colorless, black, black. And then it has 1 black. Veldrine of Singer gets -3/-0 and gains Forest Walk until end of turn. Just in case you want a 2/5 that can Forest Walk over a 5/5 that can just attack. That was a rare. So I think that might have been the last black card. It was! All of these are just 1 page. Oh, my sanity might leave intact. Next up is Aliban's Tower. It's an instant for a colorless and a red. Target blocking creature gets +3/+1 until end of turn. If that was an attacking creature, it would be a good red card. It's a blocking creature, which makes it a good white card. Next up is Ambush. Instant, 3 colorless and a red. Blocking creature gains first strike until end of turn. Again, why does it have to be blocking? Next up is Ambush Party, 2 arts. I like that one better, but neither of them are great. It is a human rogue, 3/1 for 4 colorless and a red, and it has first strike and haste. Next up is Anzaran Ruins. It's an enchantment for 2 colorless red, and when it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type, and creatures of the chosen type don't untap during their controller's untap steps. That's not horrible, but I mean, it's just so slow. Next up is Anaba Ancestor, Minotaur Spirit, 1/1 for a colorless and a red, and then tap. Other target Minotaur gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Not great. And Anba Bodyguard, 2/3 Minotaur for 3 colorless and a red, and it has first strike. It was a common, so it's got 2 arts. Not great. Next up is Nebosh Shaman. Creature Minotaur Shaman, 2/2 for 3 colorless and a red. And red tap, Nebosh Shaman deals damage to target 1 damage to target creature or player. Not great. I feel like I shouldn't have to say not great. We are reviewing Homelands. Next up is Nebosh Spirit Crafter. It's a Minotaur Shaman for a colorless and 2 colorless, 2 red. It's a 1/3, and the Minotaur creatures get +1/+0. There's a rare. There's a rare in this and Masters Edition 3. Next up is Chandler, my favorite of the Friends characters. It's a legendary creature, human rogue. It's a 3/3 for 4 colorless and a red, and then it has an activated ability of red, tap, destroy target artifact creature. Next up is Dwarven Pony. It's a 1/1 for red, 1 red tap. Target dwarf gets a mountain walk until end of turn. Next up is Dwarven Secant Clan, so you can give your Sea Clan a mountain walk. Dwarf, 1/1 for 2 colorless and a red. And then tap, choose target attacking or blocking creature whose controller controls an island. Dwarven Sea Clan deals 2 damage to that creature at the end of combat. Activate this ability only during your end combat step. Not good. Next up is Dwarven Trader, another 1/1 dwarf for 1. And that's it. Just a 1/1 dwarf for 1. First vanilla creature in the set. Poor red. Next up is Aaron the Relentless. This is one of the more sought after cards. People loved Ball Lightning, and he was kind of like a Ball Lightning that was easier to keep around, I guess. He's a 5/2 for 3 colorless red. He has haste. And then he has red, regenerate Aaron the Relentless. Next up is Evaporate. It's a sorcery for 2 colorless and a red. Evaporate deals 1 damage to white and or blue creature. Heart Wolf is next. It's a 2/2 for 3 colorless and a red wolf creature. Has first strike. And then tap, target dwarf gets +2/+0 and gains first strike until end of turn. When that creature leaves the battlefield this turn, sacrifice Heart Wolf. Activate this ability only during combat. Lots of words, not a good card. Next up is Ironclaw Curse. It's an enchantment for 1. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -0/-1. And enchanted creature can't block creatures with power equal to or greater than the enchanted creature's toughness. So, I guess that could pick off like a Llanowar Elf. It was a rare. Next up is Joven. Joven's an uncommon legendary creature, human rogue, 3/3 for 3 colorless red. Has red, 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 tap, destroy target non-out effect creature. So Joven and Chandler are buddies. Next up is Orbish Mine. It's a enchantment aura for a colorless red, red. It enters the battlefield with 3 aura counters on it. Strange counters. At the beginning of your upkeep, or whenever enchanted land becomes tapped, remove an aura counter from Orbish Mine. When the last aura counter is removed from Orbish Mine, destroy enchanted land, and Orbish Mine deals 2 damage to that land's controller. Or let's play Stone Rain. Stone Rain was around. So, next up is Retribution. It's a sorcery for 2 colorless red, red. Choose 2 target creatures an opponent controls. A player chooses and sacrifices one of those creatures and puts a -1/-1 counter on the other. It was expensive, but it's kind of a unique effect. So, next up is Winter Sky. It's a sorcery for red. Flip a coin. If you win the flip, Winter Sky deals 1 damage to creature and player. If you lose the flip, each creature draws a card. So either way, you win. And that was the last red card, so I feel like I'm winning. Okay. Over to green, and then we'll have a few gold cards, I think, and we'll have a few lands, maybe a couple artifacts, and we'll wrap things up. Next up is Anhava Constable. It's a 2-+1X, and it has 1 green for its casting cost. Anhava's Constable's toughness is equal to 1 plus the number of green creatures on the battlefield, which will be, so basically he'll be a 2/2. 3 most of the time. Next up is Anhava Inn. It's a sorcery, 1 green. You gain X plus 1 life, where X is the number of green creatures on the battlefield. So since you have that, you just cast it on turn 4, you're gaining 2 life. Okay, excellent. Okay, next up is Autumn Willow, the big good guy in the set. So she's a 4/4 avatar creature for 4 colorless green. She has Shroud and green until end of turn. Autumn Willow can be the target of spells or abilities controlled by target player as though it didn't have Shroud. So basically you can turn the Shroud off and enchant her with something. So. But since it says by target player, you can take her Shroud away for yourself only. Everybody else still can't get through it. So, next up is Carapace, or Carapace. It's an aura for green, enchanted creature. Enchanted creature gets +0/+2, and then you sacrifice Carapace to regenerate enchanted creatures. So that's, I feel like the Umbra Cycle. That's kind of like the early version of that, or what they went back to revisit to see if they could fix it. And Totem Armor did. Totem Armor is quite strong. So. Next up is Daughter of Autumn. She's an avatar. She's a 2/4 for 2 green, and then white. The next 1 damage will be dealt to target white creature this turn is dealt to Daughter of Autumn instead. So definitely pushing white-green. Next up is Fairy Noble. Strange card. It's a fairy. It's a 1/2 for 2 colorless and a green. It flies, and other fairy creatures you control get +0/+1. And then tap other fairy creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So not great. Next up is Folka Van Hava. It's a 1/1 human creature for green. And whenever Folka Van Hava becomes whenever it blocks, it gets +2/+0 until end of turn. So it turns into a 3/1 non-blocking. So that's not horrible. Not great. Next up is Hungry Mist. When you are a Hungry Mist, have a sandwich. Okay, it's an elemental. It's a 6/2 for 2 colorless green. At the beginning of your upkeep, you sacrifice Hungry Mist unless you pay green. So you pay your green, and then your opponent lightning bolts it, and then you feel sad and dumb. Next up is Joven's Ferret. It's a creature ferret. It's a 1/1 for green. Whenever it attacks, it gets +0/+2 until end of turn. Because why not? At the beginning of your upkeep, tap all creatures that blocked Joven's Ferrets this turn. They don't untap during their controller's next untap step. That's just so bad. So bad. Right. Next up is Leaping Lizard. It's a 2/3 for a colorless green. And 1 green, Leaping Lizard gets -0/-1 and gains flying until end of turn. Next up is Mammoth Harness. It's an enchantment aura, 3 colorless and a green. Enchanted creature enchanted creature loses flying. Whenever enchanted creature blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, the other creature gains first strike until end of turn. So not great. Next up is Primal Order. It's an enchantment. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, it's an enchantment for 2 colorless green. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, Primal Order deals to that player equal to the number of damage to that player equal to the number of non-basic lands he or she controls. I mean, that's not bad, but I don't think it gets any play. I mean, it's 4 mana. It's just too expensive for any legacy format. So. Next up is Renewal. Sorcery, 2 colorless and a green. As an additional cost to Renewal, sacrifice a land. Search your library for basic land and put that onto the battlefield and shuffle your library. Then draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So it's kind of a weird fixing land grant, like sacrifice a land to get a different land sort of effect. I just feel like Harrow wasn't that far away from here, and that's just much better. So as far as sets go. Next up is Root Spider. It's a 2/2 spider for 3 colorless and a green. Whenever Root Spider blocks, it gets +0/+1 and gains first strike until end of turn. If that was like a 2 casting cross creature, that we could talk about that, but on a 4 casting cross creature, it's just trash, unfortunately. Next up is Roots. Enchantment Aura, 3 colorless and a green. Enchant creature without flying, so you can't put it on a flying creature. And when Roots enters the battlefield, tap that creature, the enchanted creature, and then enchanted creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So, like a cursive change effect. Next up is Zorian Badger. It's a 2/2 Badger for 2 colorless and a green. Whenever a Zorian Badger attacks and isn't blocked, you may exile up to 2 target creatures from the defending player's graveyard. If you do, you gain 1 life for each card exiled this way, and Zorian Badger assigns no combat damage this turn. Just trash. Next up is Shrink. It's an instant, it's green, and its target creature gets -5 -0 until end of turn. That effect is now blue. Next up is Spectral Barriers. It's a 3/3 for a colorless and a green. Whenever Spectral Barriers attacks, a defending player controls no black and non-token permanents. It doesn't untap during your next untap step. So if they're not heavy black, you don't get that for a turn after you swing in with it, which I guess isn't, still a 3/3 for 2, so it's not horrible. Next up is Willow Fairy. It's a flying 1/2 for a colorless and a green. Next up is Willow Pries. This should be the last black card. It's a 2/2 fairy druid for 2 colorless green. And you tap, you may put a fairy permanent from your hand onto the battlefield, which is just super because you can play your Glitter Blossoms. And then 2 colorless and a green. Target green creature gains protection from black until end of turn. But then it costs 4 and have been reprinted in Modern. That could be used to get make a deck grindy or something. So I'm watching this. I'm doing this the night I just got a message of the Battle for Zendikar show, preview show at PAX. It was the 29th of August, and I know this is gonna air like way out in October or something, and Battle will be out, and we'll see if the reality of the Zendikar expedition lands came true. But right now we're all just kind of guessing at it. So people are estimated 1 per 167 packs, or 1 every 3.6 booster boxes. That would be 360 booster boxes or 60 booster cases to get a set of each, or 25k store price. People are already talking 50 Battle for Zendikar lands, 100 shocks, and cons fetches. Yeah, it's just weird to see Wizards push chase lands like that. And I know thematically it's like searching for treasure or something, but it's just kind of odd. thank you for bearing with me as I go off of what I normally talk about. Let's talk about an Apocalypse Chime. This is the last expansion hosing card ever printed. So as of the next set, we won't be dealing with this particular weird early game mechanic any longer. So Apocalypse Chime was, I think, even the one that worked the best. 2 casting cost for an artifact. 2 tap, sacrifice Apocalypse Chime, destroy all non-token permanents originally printed in the Homelands expansion, and they can't be regenerated. So I just feel like it worked really good. I mean, it's worthless because even if you got a couple cards, like a 2-for-1 or something like that, it's just not worth playing. Next up is Clockwork Gnomes. I had thought these guys came after Bottlework Gnomes, but Bottlework Gnomes were in Tempest. So Clockwork Gnomes, it's a 2/2 for 4, colorless, 3 tap, regenerate target artifact creature. Next up is Clockwork Steed and Clockwork Swarm. I'm going to cover these kind of together. So Steed and Swarm, they both enter the battlefield with a certain amount of counters. Actually, they both enter with 4 +1/+0 counters. So the Horse, when you first cast it, would be a 4/3, and so would the Swarm. So they can't be blocked by artifact creatures, or the Steed can't, the Swarm can't be blocked by walls. Flying, it doesn't even fly. Oh my god, these are just such bad cards. So at the beginning of at the end of combat, if the Steed or the Swarm attacked or blocked, you remove one of the counters, and then you can X tap to put up to X +1/+0 counters on the Steed or the Swarm, and they can never be higher than 4. Because that's the max that it can be, as a 4/3. Why doesn't the Swarm fly? I mean, it's a freaking bird. They're just the exact same card, except for it can't be blocked by walls, can't be blocked by artifact creatures. They're just bad. Didgeridoo's nice, but they're just bad. Next up is Didgeridoo. This was a rare. It's 1 to cast 3. You may put a Minotaur permanent from your hand. Sorry, you may put a Minotaur permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Super duper. Next up is Ebony Rhino. It's just a trample 4/5 for 7 mana. Not much else to it. Next up is Frizzo's Band. 6 to cast. Creature spells cost 2 more to cast. Next up is Jobin's Tools. 6 to cast, 4 tap. Target creature can't be blocked by walls this turn. Except by walls. Wow, that's even better. Next up is Huertero Doctor. So this was Wizard's first experiment on making Ornithopter better. It's a 0/2 Thopter for 1 casting cost. Has flying, and then you can pay 2 to fire breathe it, and you can't do it more than twice a turn. So for 5 mana, you can deal 2 damage to your opponent. Or you could probably just find a 2/2 flying creature and just pay the cost for it for less. Next up is Serrated Angels. Sorry guys, it's like 2:30 in the morning, and I'm almost done with this horrible set. I've been talking for like an hour, so you'll have to bear with me. Next up is Serrated Arrows. For a while, they're a really expensive common online for Pauper. I think the price has dropped off as like decks like Mono Black Control and stuff. And Cloudpost getting banned, I think, made it less playable because it was real easy to cast off of a Glimmer Post and a Cloudpost in play. But it's a real useful card. So maybe my favorite card out of the entire set. Definitely my favorite card out of the entire set. Artifact, 4 to cast. Enters the battlefield with 3 arrowhead counters on it. So it's got some strange counters going on. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are no arrowhead counters on Serrated Arrows, sacrifice it. And then you tap to remove an arrowhead counter from Serrated Arrows. Put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So really good. I mean, picks off weenies for days. So all we have left are the lands. There's one cycle of 5 lands in Homelands. They all operate the same way. I'm going to review one with you, and then we'll just talk about what the other 3 produce. So they're called tri-lands. They were the first experiment in having a land that would tap for 3 different color mana. But man, they really kind of screwed up how they implemented it. Because they're filter lands, they don't actually tap for the mana on their own. So, first one is on Hava Township. And this would tap for green, white, red. How it works is they all tap for colorless mana just on their own. And then they have 1 tap to add the primary color to your mana pool. So in this case, 1 tap, add green to your mana pool. And then they have 2 tap, add red or white to your mana pool. So the secondary color, you have to pay 2 to filter it. So they're just horrible. Essene Abbey is the one that's 1 to tap for white, and then 2 to tap for green or blue. Castle Singer is the 1 tap for black, or 2 to tap for blue or red. Koskin Keep is 1 to tap for red, and 2 to tap for black or green. Wizard School is 1 to tap for blue, or 2 to tap for white or black. And that's the last one. I just look at modern design where we get cards like Unknown Shores, which are filter lands that just tap for 1 and then produce, and 1 and tap and produce any color of mana you want. Makes these things look like even more horrible mistakes. They've never been reprinted online because Wizards knows that nobody would ever play them. They're just really bad. But that's Homelands. You may notice that I didn't reference any cards going into the Powered Cube. Because when you look at the Powered Cube and you go, oh, these are some high-powered cards, build-around cards that get better and better with more cards attached, right? Well, nothing in this set is good enough for a Powered Cube. But that's it. Next time around, we're going to jump forward, I believe, till June of 1996, which is almost 9 months later, I think. Let me double check that. 8 months later than Homelands. And we're going to be talking about Alliances, which is actually a good set for the most part. Still some clunky things going on as far as printing and everything goes. But it's going to be a lot more fun to talk about because Force of Will. But that's it. That's it for this show. I want to thank you all for listening. Questions, comments, concerns, anything along those lines, please leave them down in the comment box. Like, subscribe, send me kittens, whatever. Okay, have a wonderful night, day, afternoon. Bye.
Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. You can find us on Twitter at MagicGathStrat, Facebook /MagicGatheringStrat, or on the web, magicgatheringstrat.com. There you can find articles and free prize-supported leagues. This is all brought to you by our Patreons and cardhoarder.com. If you enjoy this content, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/magicgatheringstrat.